Okay, on to the final question of the paper, which is question 9. Hopefully this one won't take 16 minutes. So look, this question extends the game by allowing player 2 to replace a card in their hand with a new card from the deck. I don't know if you can hear the bird in the background, but please ignore. I've got a very annoying bird in my garden, a coel, that makes a very loud sound. Replace a card in the hand with a new card from the deck. Player 2 can choose to replace the card at either the front or the back of their hand. Figure 4 shows an example of player 2's hand containing 8 cards. So you've got your hand and they're in order, depending on when they were dealt, and you can either change the front one or the back one. So create a new subroutine called replace card. Let's do it. The main function, your main function should always be the one nearest to the bottom of your code. Oops. Replace card has the parameters of deck and player 2 hand. Nice and simple. Let's give it some parameters, deck and player 2 hand. Displays a message to enter F to replace the card at the front or B to replace the card at the back. There is no need to validate this info. Oh, interesting. So maybe my validation in the last question wasn't necessary. We'll have to have a look in the mark scheme. Let's say card to replace equals input. Enter B to replace the card at the back, or F to replace the card at the front. And again, let's give it a new line before the input. Okay, so what does it do? It replaces the card from the chosen position in player 2's hand with the card from the front of the deck. So what we need to do now is we've got F or B, and we need to turn that into a position. So if they enter, if card to replace is equal to B, then we need to look for the back of the list. So how do we find the last index in the list? Well, this is the list we're talking about. So we want to look at this list's length, and that will give us a number of items, and then you always minus 1 of that, and that finds you the last index. So we want to put that in a variable, let's call it position. And the next one's nice and easy. So if it's not B, then that means it must be F. So what we're going to do is replace the one at the front, which is just 0. First index. So then we're going to use this position variable to make some change to player 2 hand. So we're going to index into player 2 hand, which is the list, using position, and we're going to overwrite, just like you did in your Hangman project. So we need to take the hand with the hand from the front of the deck. Doesn't say what we do with the replaced. I presume nothing happens to the card, so we can just overwrite it, I presume. Yeah. So what we're going to do from this is we're going to take the front card from the deck. So we're just going to use pop, deck.pop at 0. And that will take the front card out of the deck and put it in the player's hand. And then we need to call the subroutine display hand. Display hand, and I think display hand is a procedure. So, okay, but we do need to pass it 2 values, which is hand and player name. So when we pass hand and player name, so player name is going to be player 2. So let's look at where player name comes from so we can understand. Okay, so it comes from here, I presume. So the format should be player and then player 2. So here I'm just going to pass in values directly, player 2. Don't always have to pass in variables, but here the hand we want to pass in is player 2 hand. So let's just go back to display hand because we didn't actually check. Yeah, so it's just a procedure. It doesn't have any return values, so we just call it. like a procedure. Returns player. Oh, and then this needs to be a function, of course, because we need to store the changes. So let's return player 2 hand. It doesn't say to return the deck. So we now need to find display hands at start of game. We need to find where that's defined. To the end, add code that calls the subroutine replace card to the end. Okay, so we need to call at the end of this, we want to the end of the subroutine, which I guess would be here. And we want to pass in player 2 hand, but not before we pass in the deck. And then because that will change player 2 hand, we also need to assign this. So again, let's look at where we've defined a replace card. We've got deck and player 2 hand. Deck and player 2 hand, and then we return player 2 hand, so that when we call the function, what this means is we need to then assign that to the variable to store the result of the replace card function. Okay, so I think we're ready to test it, see if it works. So we need to start a game with 8 cards. Let's do that. Oh, let's just clear the shell. So let's start a game with 8 cards. So tell us what the top trump suit would be. Oh, let's do P. That's what it says. Okay, we're going to look away. We've got some cards. I'm going to look away. Okay, and then enter, 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 and then we want to enter B to replace the card at the back of player 2's hand. So enter B to replace the card at the back, or F to replace the card at the front. So let's enter B. And let's just check whether that shows a change. A of S, 10 of triangles, 5 of S. Oh yeah, we can see. So we had the 9 of S, but now we've got the 10 of S. So it looks like our changes were successful. All right, I think that was easier than the last question. As always, let's put in our screenshots. First one. Second one. Remember, pressing end on the keyboard is a good way to go to the end of the screenshot that you pasted previously. Press Control N in the snipping tool to make a new screenshot, and then you can press Control C to copy it, Alt Tab to switch to Word. So it's good to get to know those shortcuts. And let's have a look at what the question paper says. Ooh, same again, that should have been 9.3. So let me just add a new row below. Insert row below. You will not need to do this because your EAD will match perfectly. Just make sure that I've changed that one, so it's 9.3. Okay, and the first bit of evidence we need is the replace card code. So let's get that again. Just going to search to jump to it. Replace card. Copy all of the code. I'm just going to make one change so it's clear to player 2 that they are the one doing this. I'm going to add that into the input. Okay, copy the code in. And now we're going to need to show the changes to the other thing, the other function we changed, which was display hands at start of game. Let me just check. Yeah, okay, so let's put that in as well. Okay, and there you have it. We've finished the past paper from the June 2019 series for AQA, Oxford AQA International GCSE Comp Sci.